It's my pleasure to welcome Andreas Graesser for our talk in the garden here. He's a professor for management information systems at the Villanova School of Business, but he also advises clients when it comes to data. So what's happening in that realm? What is keeping your clients up at night?
So my entire work was always to prevent those kind of situations, to let executives sleep. And one big thing is really one big topic is the data. So data in our companies these days, they are spread across many silos. And typically, the data, the CEO, the CEO certainly has no idea where the data are. The data is the CIO, who typically is responsible for all this more technical stuff. He might know a few things, but certainly not all. The biggest thing is when you walk through a company. So I just came back from a visit. Those people work still with Excel. They have SAP.
Yes.
They run their entire company on. If you go down, whatever, to where the goods come in, the products go out in the warehouse, suddenly, we cannot live with this kind of data set. So we download, we manage, we do it in an Excel, and then we feed it back or we do our job.
Okay, and what's the root cause of that? Why do we have still these large companies, these amazing financial books, as you said, and these amazing products who don't have such, let's say, basic problems?
Typically they don't have a data governance. So somebody who is responsible for data across the entire enterprise. And this is why I wrote this book. I wrote a book about the chief data officer. So a person whose job, whose accountability is to be responsible, for not having Excel somewhere in the company. And because I think data and data islands are across business units. So this is more a shared service, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So I call this a data weaver in this book title, because this data person has to weave not only the technology together, but also the people. So he has to be good in technology and has to convince people to follow his advice or his guidance.
Mm-hmm. And let's dive a little bit deeper into the concepts you're sharing. It's sort of also a very practical how-to guide, right? It's not one of those super theoretical, encyclopedic type of books. So maybe can you give us a little bit of an overview of the concepts you're sharing?
The point here of the book is really, okay, somebody is accountable for data, has to dive in, but at the end of the day, the person brings all the data topics together and leads it. Mm-hmm. That's the point. This data person has to be empowered from the boss from the CEO, to establish governance. It's not, and this is very often it's ignored even in large corporations.
Mm-hmm. But who's the ideal data weaver? You said he has to be empowered, he or she has to be empowered, but then also sort of from their expertise. You said they have to also work with people, so where do we look to? To HR, to the business, to IT? Where do we find these guys?
They are not. You cannot just hire them from the university. Those people, they need two experiences. So they have a solid technical foundation and they have a business understanding. So they know what a business process is, how business processes flow in a company, and how they are, built in a system. So they have to understand both. So I always said the person has to be a techie and a business analyst kind of skill profile. So this is not, you cannot find in any other department.
Exactly.
And those are not often.
Yeah, those are pretty rare breed. That's
Exactly.
That's the point.
And this time I added an idea where I introduce a protagonist or a player, so to speak, and I have some episodes that I invented across the book just to make the topic a little bit more touchable.
How does sort of the Gen AI and the AI topic as a whole influence the data weaver in a company? Because we talked a lot about just data, but what if AI comes into play?
I mean, when we talk about AI, we must talk about mass data. So this is not a company that has whatever, 100,000, maybe 1 million sales orders or whatever incidents or situations in a year. It has nearly billions. And the reason is you need a mass volume of data to train the system. One is the scenario, the business scenario where you want to use AI. And this is extremely important. I just earlier had somebody talking to me, he is not convinced AI or ChatGPT can help anymore.
Oh.
But the point here is much more on, okay, for what do you want to use it? And what should AI help to make things better, faster, more reliable, or more intuitive, or whatever? How could a usage scenario for enterprise look like? So they are not so straightforward and everybody knows. I mean, you have to do some innovation workshops, some design thinking workshops to even find out where the technology could help the business. So it's not so straightforward, I would say.
Okay, and what gives you a headache about identifying the use cases that companies sort of have too many problems, too few problems, they don't know how to sort of measure the impact that AI could possibly have on their processes and their problems, or all of the above maybe?
Yeah. I mean, if companies find a usage scenario, that's great, but then the headache comes with the decisions the AI tool does. How do you trust a black box? You are laughing, but the point here is you gather data. So let's assume you have all the data. You train the machine. So this box or algorithms gives you a decision or a proposal. How do you know this is correct? How do you know this is not, against ethical standards? There is a problem when we want to trust AI.
The machine.
So if you only can trust the machine if you have. So this is more or less a subset of AI. It's called explainable AI, where you can trace back how the machine came to a decision. Typically, if you use, let's say, traditional AI scenarios, you cannot trace back. So from that point, if then you only have dumb persons or humans, they just do what the machine says, this can cause headaches.
Okay. How does this relate to your work as a professor? What are your topics there? Give us a little bit of a glimpse into your life at business school.
I mean, I try to convince my students, mainly MBA students, to start thinking. I mean, this is where I think my job is. Okay, so I explain them. Okay, so they experience usage scenarios, in a prototype environment maybe, but to spawn the thinking, I mean, you need somebody from the outside, and this is where I see my job. To make them asking the questions. And this is, so I explain the technology, I explain the algorithms, but at the end I also want to make sure, okay, you're an adult and it's not the machine decides, it's still you. So the machine proposes and you have to have enough skills to decide and to evaluate if this proposal is good or bad.
Now let's look ahead. What is your next book going to be? I knew you were going to love this question.
Yeah.
The next big thing.
So I just started to advise some biotech company to get on the ERP transformation track. At one point down the road, data come in the game. Not now, so we are in the very early stage, and this kind of work, is what I love to do. I'm not sure if I write another book. I'm sure that the books helped to just also to structure my thoughts.
Yes.
But at the moment, I'm focusing more on doing, and maybe I try to apply what I wrote here in.
That's always good to walk the talk.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we talk again in, let's say, 4 years, 2027 is I think the horizon I gave the others. What will you and I be talking about then?
In 2027, I think AI will be still a topic, but much more weaved into our lives. And I think what I explained to you as a headache, this will be much more in the foreground of the discussion. So explainable AI is certainly something, ethical AI. Those questions will dominate the discussion, because then the question is, okay, will technology dominate our lives? And certainly we don't want to have this, or do we?
Probably not. Okay. What a good point to end on. Andreas, thank you so much for your time and sharing your thoughts and the concept of the Data Weaver book. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the talk, and
Cheers.
Stay in touch.